All right. Good morning, everyone. It is a very pretty Saturday morning here in Nashville. Obviously, today is a kind of a very sad day in this country's history. We have been to two events this morning, honoring the memories of those individuals that we lost and remembering all the people that provided assistance and service, and also remembering all the people that really did get impacted by the events of 20 years ago. So there was an event this morning by the Metro Council, and then there was an event with the fire department, and now there's an event at the Bellevue Community Center, which is going to start about 11. And I was supposed to be here at 11, so I came on over. So that's why you see me in the car. So we've got a couple of minutes before we actually get fully started. Linda Mcfadden Ketchum is our guest today. She is the co-lead for legislative work with Moms Demand Action. Linda, how are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Good. I'm glad you're on the show. We've been meaning to have you on the show. I'm glad you're on.
Thank you.
So in the first 2 or 3 minutes we've got while we're just sitting here, I usually ask non-relevant questions, but what is happening behind your right shoulder? Is that wallpaper? What is that? What have you got going on over there?
Those are a lot of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America placards, things we use at rallies and that kind of thing. My favorite one says another Tennessean for gun sense.
Well, how many of those did you give out?
Hundreds. Those were printed up when the NRA was here in 2015.
Yeah.
And we had a rally downtown. There were 80,000 of them and 300 of us.
You start somewhere.
That's right.
So is this like an office space that you've got, or is this like you started decorating your home with slogans?
Oh, this is my home office that is totally dedicated to Moms Demand Action.
Okay. All right. I got it. It looked good. And I was thinking you might go into the wallpapering business. You could start a whole thing of advocacy wallpaper.
Right. I also have a lot of candidate signs around. I see Amanda McClendon, Second Circuit Judge over here.
Well, that's good because Judge McClendon is on this call. So
I saw that. And I see Nancy Van Rees and Mike Stewart and Claudia Bonnyman and Carl Dean and Hillary and other folks.
Very good. Very good. You become the new campaign sign collector for historic purposes. How about that?
There you go. There you go.
It is 10:03. We're ready to start. Again, Judge Amanda McClendon is on the call today. I've seen Judge McClendon already at 2 events. Again, a very, I was trying to figure out the right words to describe what today is like. It's a day of remembrance. It's a day to kind of reflect and think. Spent a lot of time last night watching some of the programming on ABC and CBS. And I mentioned this morning I had seen the show. Diane Sawyers did a show about babies that were born after September 11th. And these were the babies of the mothers who lost their spouses somewhere along that day. And the kids have grown up, and it was so interesting to listen to them. Their message was one of hope and concern for the nation and to bring back togetherness. And I've heard a lot of that today, Linda, both in the events the council had and then the fire department had, people talking about, you know what, time to rethink all this stuff and start figuring out how we get back together. Our guest today, Linda Mcfadden Ketchum, co-lead for legislative work at Moms Demand Action. Thank you for being here. And I don't have any up-to-date COVID numbers. We stopped that a while back, but let's just say it's still not good in Nashville and across the state. So we keep an eye on that as well. Linda, as I ask all my guests, where are you from? What have you been doing all your life? how did you get to this, to the point of going to work for MAD? Not MAD, Moms
okay.
Demand Action, had it backwards. Yeah.
That's okay. We were modeled after MAD.
Okay.
I'm from North Carolina. I came over to Tennessee in '66 to go to Peabody College, which was not a part of Vanderbilt at that time, to train to be a teacher, special education teacher. I started teaching in 1970 and stopped in 2002. I taught children with severe behavior disorders and autism in Nashville and Davidson County. I started so early that there was not even a federal mandate that said special needs kids should be educated, but we were doing it anyway in NPS back in 1970. I did that, took a few years out to have our children. In 2000, I was hired by the Gore campaign to run the front desk at the campaign headquarters over in Metro Center. And I really got the, I learned how much political action matters to all the services that we want to provide to our kids. So as quickly as I could retire, I did. And I started doing political consulting, and that's where I worked with so many wonderful candidates. Lots of women, especially, that's a special interest, but some great male candidates also. Somewhere in there, an aunt and uncle died in a murder-suicide with a firearm that no one in the family knew my uncle had. It was very shocking and horrifying, especially for his children, of course. And then about 11 years ago, a good friend of mine, she survived, but she was shot in the head in the Unitarian Church shooting in Knoxville, which most of you will have heard about. My friend survived. She was a Hillwood High School graduate, a neighbor, our first family babysitter, a wonderful person. That kind of knocked me for a loop, but it was Sandy Hook that took me all the way over. Having been a teacher, I could not imagine what those classrooms looked like. And I couldn't imagine that what happened. I had one more campaign I was working on at that time. As soon as that race was over, I jumped in, and I've been volunteering for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America since March of 2013.
Okay. So tell me, so it was it the Sandy Hook situation that that just pushed you into doing this type of work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you started volunteering for Moms Demand Action. And then you've been there, obviously you've been helping them for 8 years. So yes. Obviously you started volunteering, and then eventually you became part of the entity itself. Was Moms Demand Action already in Tennessee when you went to go volunteer? Was this something you helped start, or how long had it been floating around in Tennessee before you became a part of it?
Oh, that's a good question. I am a volunteer. I've never been on staff. All of us at the state level are volunteers. And no, there was no Moms Demand Action until 2 days after Sandy Hook. It was, I've got a photograph here. Can you see this woman? Can you see that?
Yes, I can see this person. You move it down just a little bit. Move it down just a little bit more. Okay, now we can see her.
Okay, this is Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. She was an Indianapolis mom of 5. And after Sandy Hook happened, the day after, she started searching on the internet for grassroots organizations working to save lives and get the death rate down. And she found, guess what? Nothing. Yeah. So she started a Facebook group, and now there are 6 million of us all across the country in every state. And she's testimony to what one person can do.
So tell me, tell me what Moms Demand Action does. I mean, what is its core mission, and what does it do to get to its core mission?
Okay. Our core mission is to save lives and get the death rate down.
Okay.
Before I tell you more, can we hear from Amelia, our survivor? This would be a good time for her, because her story is the reason we do what we do.
So this is Amelia Griswold. Miss Griswold, can you get on?
Yes, am I on?
You're on. How are you
Can
doing
you hear
this morning?
me? Oh, hi.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Every day is sad for me. March the 6th of 2015, my son, Devontae, which was 15 years old at the time, was shot and killed by an 11-year-old that was standing on my porch playing with a gun. My baby didn't know he had a gun. He was shoveling snow in the driveway. And when the gun went off, my baby was shot and killed. When I got involved with the moms, Linda, I tell you, she literally saved my life, because I was so devastated, and I was just like walking around zombie because of the death of my baby. I've been with Mom now since 2015. And I'm so happy that I finally got to meet Moms and Linda, because I've been so many places talking about the situation, about the gun violence. And I've always felt that if we start in the schools, we have to now start with elementary schools, because the child that shot my baby was only 11 years old. He was just a child. And I think it's best that we start in the elementary schools and to educate the babies about the very important things of not getting involved with guns and what it can do and how much devastation it can cause on one family. My son, he was a very good child, didn't get in trouble. He did the teenage stuff, played music, liked to rap, just kid stuff. And he wasn't in no gang, and he wasn't a part of that. He was just a happy child and made friends everywhere he went. And this child, that I felt that the parents was not supervising the way they should. You should always supervise where your children go, who they hang with. And I think the parents there was not supervising the children. And this child got hold to a gun from where we do not know today. Because he said he only found his gun. But it's so easy for children to get hold to guns. It's so easy for children to get hold to anything. And the parents still won't know about it. But if you monitor your children, supervise your children, especially 11-year-old, that should have never had gotten a gun in the first place. But he killed my baby, March the 6th. My baby died at 4:35 on that Friday afternoon. And that was the most devastating thing that I could ever go through, or any mom. And I wish that on no one, to lose a child. I've always felt that parents should not have to bury their child. Their child buries their parents. And I had the devastating process of going to a funeral home, picking out a casket, which I could not do. I was just so overwhelmed by the grief and by the heartache, and I just could not do it. And I had to leave all of that up to my husband. If you've never lost a child, you don't know what a parent goes through every day from March the 6th. I wake up wondering about my child. I go to bed wondering about my child. I look in his room and know he's never gonna come back. It took me 2 years to realize that my baby was never gonna come back. I don't know why I couldn't grasp that reality that my baby was gone, because I was always hoping he was gonna walk back in the door, and he never have. So it took me 2 years to come out of that. Every day I wake up, I think about my baby. I wonder what he's doing, and I live this every day. You don't never get over it. You don't never get over going through a loss of your child. And I sympathize with any mother or father that have lost a child, as I understand. So understand today is a day of mourning for all those people that died 9/11. And I sympathize with those mothers, the fathers, the husbands, the wives, the children. And I sympathize with those people because I can understand how they feel and what they're going through every day. And
So, Ms. Griswold,
I think Linda, yes. Uh-huh.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I'm going to ask Linda the same question.
Schulman's out here.
Well, see if we can get everybody to mute. There we go. If we can get everybody to mute for a second. Ms. Griswold, if what based upon your horrific situation, what would you try to get the laws changed to do, to try to make sure that these things don't happen anymore?
To really educate people on how to secure their firearm where they won't be stolen from their cars or homes. Teach their children the importance of not being, if they see a gun, tell an adult, don't touch it. To go into the schools, in elementary schools, teach the children about gun violence. Because, I mean, today's society, children is seeing tragic all around them. A lot of children, especially in the lower income projects and places like that, they're seeing this violence every day. And I think it's a good thing that if we can get this information out to people to where they can be hold accountable for not securing their firearms. It's so easy that these, now you're seeing that where they're breaking in cars. Why would you keep your firearm in your car? Why come you can't have it in your home in a safe or up in, somewhere where no one can get, especially a child, and knowing where your children are? This is what I would like to see done, that we can go out into these schools and talk to the children. And I've had a lot of opportunity to talk. When my son died, a lot of his friends would still come to my house on the anniversary of his death and on his birthday. And I always try to talk to the children. Please, please, please don't get involved in the gangs. Don't get involved in things that's going to get you hurt or get you killed. And I thank God that some of those children are still coming back to my home today. We just had some come by August the 10th, which was my baby's birthday. And some came by on that day. And then some came by on March the 6th. And we released balloons. And I'm so happy to see these kids and knowing that these kids have not gotten involved with the guns or their life being taken away so young. I feel so bad every time I hear of a child being killed by a gun. And it brings back memories about my son. And sometimes I try to go to, if they have like a candlelight visual, I'll try to go to some of them and just, just look around and just, I feel so sad because it seems like it's nothing that I can do. And I want to do something or get something done to where we can save our children, because so many of our children are dying senseless. And just like my baby, he was shoveling snow in the driveway, and his little friends
Right.
come up and they were on the porch. And I always wondered, if that gun, if he just accidentally shot that gun, why come it out in the open? Why come that bullet couldn't have went somewhere else? Why did it have to hit my baby? Why? And it was an open field.
Why, I don't know why these things happen. They're horrible situations, and you want to stop now. You start asking specific questions about why was it pointed, and why did the child even have the gun in the first place? Linda, after what Ms. Griswold has said, how do you take that type of information and go about achieving policies, particularly in this in the state of Tennessee, that first of all teaches young people how dangerous guns can be, but then also comes about and brings about good common sense legislation about making sure that guns don't fall into the people's hands that really shouldn't have guns.
Right.
Linda, are you back? I'm back to you. She may be muted.
Sorry, I was.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go.
Thank you, Amelia. One of the tools we use are survivor stories like Amelia's. Part of what our organization does is we have a survivor network that's nationwide, and we raise up survivors who are ready to talk and tell their stories, because they're not ignorable. They're powerful, and even legislators will sit up and listen to a survivor story. And Amelia has gotten better and better over the years. And thank you so much. Her story is so heartbreaking.
Yeah, her story is very, very strong.
Yeah. The best thing we could do in our state would be to close the background check loophole and require a background check on every gun sale in our state. People think, oh, we have a background check system. Yes, we do. It's a federal system. It's good. But about 40% of guns are acquired by people who avoid that system. Some states have closed that loophole, so that if I want to sell you a gun, Jim, I don't know your background. I suspect you could buy a gun legally, but maybe you couldn't. Then you and I meet in the parking lot at Target and we exchange. You give me the money and I give you the gun. Instead of doing that, we'd have to go to a gun shop and pay $20-25 and do a background check on you. And then I would be able to sell you the gun. That's not too much to ask. And we need that in our state. And some states have closed that loophole. We also need.
And what would be the penalty? Just stopping you on that one. What would be the penalty? What have other states done? Because we both know that the way around a lot of this is either at outside of a gun show, where you step outside in the parking lot, or you step outside in the parking lot of a department store or a sporting goods store where you get this. What's the penalty? How do you stop people from doing that anyway?
Well, we don't worry too much about criminals and people who aren't going to abide by the law. Most people want to be law abiding, and that's why we have speed limits on the roads and car seat requirements for kids. So we don't worry about the criminals. I don't know how you stop that. That's not in my wheelhouse. But I'll have to get back to you on the part about the penalty. I'm guessing that in states where if folks in states that have closed that loophole and a background check is required, it's probably it could be a misdemeanor, might be a felony to transfer or acquire a gun without doing that. I don't know.
Well,
I'll
yeah.
get back to you.
Well, and that's okay. Sometimes I ask questions that we simply don't know. I think the idea is if we were to implement some type of increased licensing requirement, so you can't just go into the parking lot and buy one. How are you going to convince people not to do that? Because it is an extra step, and I think that's part of it. And the penalty is the thing that if you because that would apply to both individuals if they did it in the parking lot.
Yep.
You could the charges against not only the seller but the buyer. Okay. So moving on from that, what go to my big question, which is obviously we live in a Republican state, very red, very pro NRA. Have a lot of we just had some major legislation that passed that is even I think is even more pro NRA than maybe some of the people in the NRA. How do you deal with trying to make sense? There was a question that came in, Linda, over the week that said, how does the state legislature be so supportive of law enforcement principles, but then they don't listen to law enforcement when they say quit having it so that all these people who shouldn't have guns have guns? That was a very long question.
No, that's okay. There's no reconciling it. It's nonsensical. Most of those legislators are really not supporters of law enforcement. They just say they are. They're into the money. That's all this is about. The gun lobby works for gun manufacturers, and anyway, their job is to make a profit for folks. And that money, finds its way into politics. I'm not saying that a lot of our senators and House members have taken big bucks, because most of them have not, but they're all terrified of being primaried by somebody. And the NRA is good at finding folks to run against them. And what politicians want to do is keep their seats. And, they're just not telling the truth when they say they support law enforcement.
Okay, so when you say they don't support law enforcement, I know people, I'm a politician, I know we can talk a good game, but how do you bring that to people's attention? I mean, well, let me put it this way. I'll give you another example. So after Sandy Hook, 90% of this country, whatever, it should have been higher than that, said we should have background checks to check people for mental health issues. And we don't want people who have serious mental health issues getting access to weapons. Yet Washington couldn't pass anything.
Yeah.
I'm with you. After Sandy Hook, I thought, well, I was concerned that we would have about a 6-month window to push. And people kept saying, no, this is going to change the world. And it's like, I don't think so. I think you're going to have to push quickly because it's on people's minds. And after 6 months, then we'll move on to something else. How do you convince people that, a background check is not a violation of the Second Amendment? It's just trying to keep guns out of the people's hands who shouldn't have them.
Correct. Maybe they have to hear stories like Amelia's over and over. I was alive and young during Vietnam, and I remember it seemed to me that every family had to lose somebody before we finally said, we are getting out of this mess. This is not worth it. And so that's why we feature folks like Amelia to say, this happened to me, it can happen to you. It's everywhere. We've got 58% of Americans are either survivors of a gun incident or know somebody who lost somebody. That's a lot of people.
So how come it isn't enough to get there? I think, and and I'm asking you questions there's no way you can answer. But, I think from my standpoint, I would look at, first of all, Sandy Hook, I thought was, if this country can't wake up after an event like that, there is something terribly wrong with it. Okay. Yet we couldn't pass legislation. And then you had those series of school shootings. So it's like, how many shootings do we have? And we still have them going on. And what we get is, this is terrible. We got to figure out a way to stop this. And then we have another school shooting. Since when did we become this type of country? Maybe you can answer that one first, and then I'll see if you can come up with anything to how we start going back. Yeah.
Well, you will be encouraged to know that there are many states that have much better gun laws than we do. And in 2018, Virginia flipped the governor's seat, the House, and the state Senate, and they're passing good gun laws, a lot of them, 5 or 6 this last session. And other states are doing the same thing. We here in the South, we're the old Confederacy, we're the holdouts. Things are not good here, but it's a long game. It's a real long game. We didn't get here overnight. The NRA has been marching through Georgia for 20, 30 years now. And there was nobody down there at the legislature in Tennessee to counter them until we showed up in 2014. When we first started lobbying at the legislature, there was nobody else. And there were about 10 of us. And now there are hundreds of us. And, through films and Zooms like this that other people will see, we grow. And yes, we lose at the legislature, but we call it losing forward, because every time we lose, we gain new people. And one wonderful example of that is that we have cultivated great relationships over the last 3 years. This is all in the permitless carry fight with gun safety instructors. They get it. Some of them, that's their livelihood, but most of them that we have met, and we have hundreds in our group, who they are interested in safety. They understand the lethality of weapons, and they know how much it takes to really be a responsible gun owner, which we support. We have no problem with responsible gun ownership. It's the rest of them that we have a problem with. And now, when we work on a bill at the legislature, and we may lose, but we're moving forward. We can call on gun instructors who come up there, and they're card carrying NRA members, and they're gun owners, and they say, these people are right. You should get training to carry in public. We need to up our training. You shouldn't be able to get a permit by going on a 90-minute video and taking a test.
So, so in Virginia, obviously they switched the party roles, and that's allowed that state to start passing more sensible gun laws. Yeah. Is there a state? I mean, it's an interesting day to be talking about all this stuff. Because you're talking about, remembrance and loss of life and breakdown in procedures and other things that have been said, how do people get in this country, and then we're able to learn how to do this type of stuff, and we weren't fast enough to catch it. From a logical standpoint, the more guns that are out there, the more likely we are to have gun shootings and gun deaths. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yes.
And then you have situations like Miss Griswold, and then, you talk about in her situation, a little kid shooting another kid. We just had, I think, an 8-year-old take a loaded gun to school in Nashville.
Yeah.
Can you go up to the Hill and go, we don't want this. Nobody should want this. Nobody wants an 8-year-old taking a loaded gun to school. How do you deal with fighting for sensible gun legislation when it just makes sense. It's hard for me to get on the other side of this issue and go, yeah, I don't want to take steps to make sure that 18-year-olds carry a gun into school.
Yeah. It's not an easy, there's no way, I don't know how you make someone see our side who is so stuck in the other side. We just have to get rid of them. The super majority is not interested in common sense gun laws. I mean, they show this over and over. We fought permitless carry for 5 years and pushed it back. But once Governor Lee got in there, he's all about it. So, you know, that's why we have our Gun Sense candidate program. You know, the NRA has a survey for candidates. You've probably gotten it. Well, we have a survey also. Ours is shorter than theirs. And if folks answer the questions to our satisfaction and pledge to work to pass good gun laws that will save lives, then they get that distinction and they can use it in their election work or not. Some are from districts where it wouldn't be to their advantage to say they have gun sense, but many people are using it in lots of other states for sure, where people are looking for that.
So without giving away all your secrets, it sounds like there's a strategy that you all sort of follow in terms of promotion, losing forward, you know, who do you deal with? It sounds like you all have kind of a game plan in place to keep working at this until we get more sensible gun reform.
Absolutely. I mean, we know it's a long game. And you hear about the failures, you hear about the bad bills that pass, but you don't hear about the connections that we are making, the alliances we're forming with other organizations who've had enough of this. And the votes that we're managing in committees that are better than they were. We're still losing, but not by as much. And that's how you do it. It's really, really incremental. Right. It's not, it's grueling. It requires lots of on the ground field work, lots of phoning, emailing, meeting with folks.
So tell me about Moms Demand Action is a statewide agency, correct?
It's a statewide volunteer organization, but it's part of a national organization. Right.
Okay, but it's got would you call it a Tennessee chapter of Moms Demand Action? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay. So it's statewide. How many people are a part of this entity in Tennessee?
Probably about 5,000.
Okay.
Our you'll like this. Our current chapter leader is from Johnson City.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is it? Who is the chapter leader?
Her name is Jessica Joyner.
Okay.
She's a young mom.
Don't know her.
Yeah, she's a young mom. She's a teacher in, I want to say, Jonesboro, but she lives in Johnson City.
Okay. The reason that's brought up is that I'm from Johnson City.
Yeah, and I didn't know that.
So you learn something new all the time. That's where I'm originally from. Tell me about nationally, how many people are like this? I guess the reason I'm asking is that 5,000 is really, really good, strong number. But you know, you start getting it higher and higher and higher, and there's more and more people demanding certain responsibilities. At some point, it becomes more difficult for politicians, despite their leanings, not to notice that things are growing. So you were talking about 5,000. How many members of the NRA are in Tennessee?
Golly.
A lot,
I have no idea. Probably more. Yeah, okay. A lot.
Yeah, a lot more. Okay. Yeah. So at this point, if your balance is like this, how do you start bringing that balance up? You got to get the word out. Because I mean, again, you're not, just to be clear, this group is not demanding an end to the Second Amendment. That's not what you're talking about.
No.
Yeah, you are. You understand the Second Amendment. What you're talking about is sensible gun reform, so that again, 8-year-olds don't carry guns into school. There are
Mhm.
penalties associated with that. You do not want children bringing guns into school. That's terrifying.
Mhm.
And you want adults who have guns to lock them up someplace and not leave them in cars and have them broken into, or leave the car unlocked and people steal your guns. And you want people who have a history of serious mental illness or mental illness who should not be carrying weapons or getting weapons to not get them. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is very, very logical thinking, because we want people to be safe. And you've got the police that are supportive, and you've got other groups that are supportive, but you've got this pretty strong balance in a state that seems to be much more focused on liking their guns.
Yeah.
So again, what do you do?
Back to safe storage. Thank you for mentioning that. There's a couple of things I'd like to say about it. Number one, there is a sales tax holiday going on through next June 30th on all gun safety equipment, devices, safes, trigger locks, cable locks. All of those are tax-free in our state for the next till the end of the fiscal year. There's a small incentive to lock up your guns if you aren't already. I've got another visual for you. Can you see
Smart.
that? Yep. Be
Yeah.
smart.
Be smart.
Be Smart is our safe storage presentation that we give to community groups, Sunday school classes, neighborhood groups. It's very neutral. It's not judgmental. We are trained to do it all over the state. We'd be happy to present it via Zoom. We're not doing it in person right now. And it is about how you must secure your guns at home and in the car, what's required. It is, it's not about whether you should have a gun. It's about how you must secure it if you're going to have one. The most valuable part of it is the A, which is ask about the presence of guns in homes where you may be leaving your children. We should all assume that we know that guns are everywhere in our state. We should not leave the kids for a play date somewhere without asking the question, do you have a swimming pool? Johnny's allergic to peanut butter. Do you have guns? You've got to ask the question, and it's awkward and people don't like to do it, but it's a lot better than having your kid and their playmate find a gun and shoot each other. Believe me, that's awful. That's what happened.
Is there an appropriate way that you all have learned to bring that up in a conversation so that it doesn't, what's the best way to do it?
Well, most of the young moms, and they're the ones arranging play dates, our kids are gone or out of the house. They usually are either emailing or texting, and they find that an email or text to say, we're looking forward to coming over. But Johnny's allergic to peanuts. He's a little bit afraid of dogs. And I need to ask, do you have guns in the house? That way it's not as personal as, head to head.
And are you supposed to say, if they do have guns in the house, have you got them secured?
Yes, you ask.
Okay.
And some of the moms even say, when I come over, I want to see. I want to see how you do it. They just want to see. And if they don't have their guns secured, usually the mom will say, let's meet at the park. They don't say, oh, I'm not bringing Johnny over there. Or they might say, I'm not comfortable. Or bring your kids over here. Our guns are locked up, or we don't have any. Anyway, this is a free service we do. It's a 20-minute presentation. It's quite good. It's not red, white, and blue. It's not political. We leave all that at the door. And it's a great reminder for folks who might not be thinking about. Also, we encourage folks to talk to workmen who come into their house. If you don't want somebody with a gun in your house, you better ask. We do it every time. We had one guy was pretty angry about it, but he wanted to do the work. So he locked his gun up and came back in. So I forget what we were talking about safe storage, but then I forgot your original question. Sorry.
I forgot it too, but I want to move on. So what is the penalty for in Tennessee if I am an irresponsible gun owner and I let's say it's loaded and it's in my car and I leave my car unlocked or a window open and somebody breaks in and steals the gun that I irresponsibly left in the car, and then they go out and hold up somebody or shoot somebody. What's the penalty for me? What's my responsibility in all this?
I'm pretty sure it's nothing.
So I didn't do anything except be irresponsible, and because of my irresponsibility, it led to somebody getting hurt.
And
but I'm not responsible at all, even though.
I believe that's the case. I think that's the case. Even if you report your gun stolen, then you're a victim. And we really don't want to mess with a victim because you're the victim of theft. And oh, poor you, even though you were stupid, you're stupid. Somebody steals from you, you still get a lot of sympathy in the law, and legislators don't want to penalize you for your stupidity because you're a victim.
Okay, so let's go to Miss Griswold's situation. Child somehow has a loaded gun that they got somehow that ends up obviously killing another individual. You know, you can get into the arguments about, did they understand what a gun was? Did they understand what it means to pull the trigger? That all those different things of intent. But what's the responsibility for the parent there? They because of their negligence, somebody else was killed because they let a child have access to a gun. What are the laws in the state, if you know, for that?
There's not much as far as I understand it. We need a safe storage law that would provide a penalty for someone who allows a kid to get a hold of a gun and discharge it. We don't have that here.
Okay. Generally, tell me about, if you know, the penalties for having if you commit a crime and you have got either a stolen weapon or well, at this point, if you've just got a weapon that there is no license, there's nothing. There are increased penalties if you commit a crime with a gun. At least there used to be. Is that still the case? Okay. And are there additional penalties if it happens to be a stolen gun?
Don't know. Good question.
Okay.
I know that our DA, Glenn Funk, has really been bearing down on gun crimes. And I'm glad that needs to happen.
Okay. So Governor Lee last year signed into law a carryless gun permit bill. Okay. Explain to people, if they don't understand, what that means.
Well, I'll go back and say, until he signed it, the law, we had a carry permit requirement, a training requirement. If you wanted to carry outside of your car, you can have a gun at home, you can have a gun in the car without a permit. But after that, if you get out of the car, you have to have a permit to carry it concealed or open in public in the world. And until this permitless bill was passed and signed, and until 2 years ago, I'll back up some more, you had to do an 8-hour training class in person, 8 hours of classroom instruction. You had to demonstrate that you could fire the weapon and hit a target. It was a minimal requirement, but you did have to shoot the thing. Then 2 years ago, they did away with or added in you can do it online. You don't have to demonstrate, you know, how to fire your gun. Now with permitless, you don't have to have any kind of or any kind of permit. So Jim, Mr. Vice Mayor, you have never fired a gun, but you decide you're going to get one. You can go get one if you can legally own it and buy it. And I'm assuming you could carry, never having fired that weapon. Okay. Yeah.
I can carry, and I can carry openly. I can walk around anywhere, I think in the city, except for places that have the sign that says it's banned. I can walk around and have it on my side. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, even though I have never taken any classes, I don't have to do anything. I just carry it. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Another visual.
Yeah, I got it. I'm glad you have lots of visuals.
This is something we need to see a lot more on businesses.
Okay. So let me, okay, so I want to ask you a series of, we've got about a little less than 10 minutes left. So just a series of questions that I'm going to throw at you. And again, you may not know the answers to this, but, well, let me start with the main one. So we have some states that are just whatever, you know, you carry weapons all you want. We want people to buy as many weapons as they can. We don't care. We're going to decrease all the regulations. Then you got other states that are trying to do something about this.
Yes.
National strategy about, because I assume every day there are more and more guns that are getting out in our society. What is the solution to this? I mean, obviously, again, I go back to my previous statement. The more guns that are out there, the more likely that there are going to be shootings. It's just going to follow from each other.
Yep.
We don't seem, is there some national strategy that we should be now looking at, or maybe the Biden folks are looking at, to say, hold on?
Well, yeah.
And yeah, okay. So what is it? What would be the strategy?
Well, one of the strategies was it's to get a director at the ATF&E. We haven't had a director at alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives in 6 years. It's their job to enforce federal gun law. And David Chipman, we just had to withdraw him because some folks in the Senate thought he was too, had too much gun sense, I guess. He was too friendly to groups like mine. We need to improve our background check law, and I think we will, so that there are fewer loopholes. We need to get the ATF to really clamp down on what are called ghost guns. These are the guns you can make at home. There are no serial numbers. They're not traceable, and criminals love them because nobody can trace their gun and at the scene of the crime. We need a national red flag law, an extreme risk protection order law, which would allow us to separate folks at extreme risk for things like suicide or other kinds of shootings from their weapons for up to a year. That's in the hopper. Those are just some of the things we're working on. But before we go, I want to call everyone's attention to the problem of gun suicide. You may not know this, but 62%, let's just say 2/3 of all gun deaths are suicides. That's horrible. The other third are homicides, also horrible. And then there's a small sliver of unintentionals, police-involved shootings, and just mysterious shootings. Nobody knows. And this is Suicide Awareness Prevention Month. Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And
so when I think Jim got knocked out here, so I'm jumping on real quick.
That's okay.
So keep talking. I think I'm logging him back in.
Okay, we have several members in our organization who have had family members taken because of gun suicide. We've got moms whose teenage children took their lives with firearms that belonged to the moms. They weren't secured. We've got a Vietnam veteran whose buddy took his life many years after Vietnam with the firearm that he was trained to use there. And no one knew he was in trouble. We've got another member whose sister survived a firearm suicide attempt because he got to her in time and stuffed towels in her neck wound so she didn't bleed to death before the EMTs got there. It's problem that nobody much wants to talk about, but we really have to. It's one of the ways we can get these numbers down is by forgetting. Yes, people feel shame about suicide. I don't know. They do, and they don't want to talk about it, but we have to. And the thing, the thing that individuals can do to cut down on the numbers of firearm suicides is, number one, if you can, get the gun away from the person that you have concerns about. Also the prescription drugs and, other lethal means. But number two, talk to them. Talk face to face and say, I care about you. I'm worried about you. Are you thinking about taking your life? You are not bringing up something that they have not already thought about. That's no excuse. And then shut up and let them tell you what's going on and just nod. Let them be heard. That's the one thing that each of us can do. Don't give advice. Don't tell them what you think. Let them talk to you. And then hook them up with the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network or the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They've got hotlines. I'll give you the number, and I would like to ask you to put it in your phone because you need it when you need it. So it's 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. And in a few months, we're going to have a 3-digit suicide number, and it's going to be 988. And that's going to be great because it will be easier to remember. But we don't have it yet.
Is that going to be a national number? I mean, everybody's going to be able to use it? Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
Well, I disappeared for just a minute. I think I hit the wrong button. I disappeared for a minute. So I appreciate Joyce getting back on. We only have like a couple more minutes. Okay. So I need 2 more questions and 1 bit of information. Let's go back to the information. If people are interested in joining your organization, Moms Demand Action, what's the website and how do they get involved?
Oh, easy. It's momsdemandaction.org.
Okay.
Or
all right, and then is that a national thing, and then they just have to locate Tennessee? Is that it?
Yeah, they'll join and we'll hear about it. They can also text the word join to 64433.
64433 and then send the text join. Is that it?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right. And different ways to get involved. You can volunteer, obviously. You can become part of advocacy groups, I assume. You can do everything from stuffing letters to everything else that you all have to do. Is that right?
Yep. You can be a Be Smart presenter.
Okay.
Thank you. Somebody put the website in the chat. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So let me ask you 2 last questions, and we've got less than 2 minutes. So they're quick questions. The first one is, if Tennesseans wanted to look at a model state for gun reform, proper gun reform, what would be the best state? And if then Tennessee was going like, well, I'm not sure how fast we can get there, but let's look at a state that is kind of in between, that is starting to get there, where would you tell people to look?
Oh gosh.
I mean, you mentioned Virginia.
Virginia is still in between. They're emerging from a dark period. I would say there. Maryland also has good gun laws. I can't think of a sort of more in between place. A place that's starting to see the light. It would be pretty, I mean, not to get too political, but it would be any state that is turning purple. Colorado,
right.
Colorado.
So if people are Colorado, okay, we might go take a look at that. Mm-hmm. Hey, Linda, okay, so we're out of time, but this has been very interesting. I've learned quite a bit, and I appreciate your commitment to keep doing this. It's very important. It worries me, and for the long term, short term and long term, and we have to have some responsible legislation in this country.
Yes. And Jim,
so I appreciate. Yeah.
Can I say one last thing in parting?
Sure.
Never doubt,
Yeah.
you should always know that your individual actions matter. Do not whine, do not complain, do not feel despair. That doesn't get us anywhere. But there are lots of things that we can do as individuals, and every action matters.
Thank you. It's a good way to end today's program and today's overall programs as well. Janet Hobson is going to be our guest next week. She's with the Davidson County Drug Court, so it ought to be interesting. That'll be next Saturday. Again, Linda, thanks for being my guest. Everybody be safe today. It's a day to remember. So take some time for yourself and rest, and again, be safe. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye.
Thanks.